Hey, welcome back, guys. Episode 7, titled Allow Me to Reintroduce Myself, was the best definition of explosive, with Unique re-emerging before the world to claim back everything he's ever lost with an iron fist, fully disregarding the velvet glove that formerly accompanied his criminal endeavors and smoothed him out altogether. In this video, we'll break down 5 missable details from Episode 7 and make predictions for how these events will affect the remainder of the season. Before we begin, be sure to hit the like button, subscribe, and bell notification to immediately receive these videos. Also, big thank you to all of my Patreon family. If you'd like to be the next one, hit the link pinned to the comments below. And lastly, a spoiler alert is now in effect for all things power. Here we go. Missable detail number 5. Old dog, new tricks. Unique makes his triumphant return this episode with his old aesthetic on full display with jewelry and a pimped out mink to match. However, that's where the comparisons end with Unique and the remaining aspects of his former self, because we're also introduced to a psychologically fractured version of the once methodical and even killed Kadeem Unique Mathis. Referred to as Southside Jamaica's resurrected Lamb of God, his return falling on Good Friday/Easter weekend ironically, his behavior is anything but divine, as Neek harshly rebukes not just his enemy Rock, but also his ally and baby mother, Pernessa, who's equally taken aback by Neek's lack of posture, measure, and rationale. He's been holding back for 6 episodes and re-emerged on the 7th just to crash out as often as possible due to the developing nature of his traumatic brain injury. Remember, the cognitive and behavioral symptoms of a TBI are as follows: confusion and disorientation, feeling dazed, confused, or disoriented, memory problems, difficulty remembering events before or after the injury, or having trouble concentrating, behavioral changes, and this is the key part: irritability, restlessness, aggression, or changes in personality, difficulty with thinking and problem solving, trouble processing information or making decisions, and lastly, sleep disturbances, difficulty sleeping or sleeping more than usual, or having sleep apnea, parts of which we saw with him early on as he recovered from the initial phases of his traumatic brain injury. This is why he refuses to listen when Rock attempts to relay the true narrative surrounding his fall demise, or why he's unwilling to accept Pernessa's wider perspective on his previous removal, taking Rock out of the equation. Simply put, Neek is incapable of rightly dividing the truth and separating the evil from the good due to the adverse effects from his initial head injury. The main trick in all of this is that his appearance outwardly conveys the real Unique has risen, but his behavior and dramatic mood swings cancels this out. His historical affinity for flashy clothes and expressive minks date all the way back to the pilot, but although he's recovered his aesthetic flash, none of his internal flair remains, and his current mental state will only weaken his position with time and result in his undoing altogether before the season is out. Missable detail number 4, a murder on Howard Beach. Stefano meets with Marvin to converse about yet another job he has lined up for him, this one closer to home and more treacherous than all of the others. But prior to giving Uncle Marv the rundown, Stefano is sidetracked by a developing tragedy of his own in the case of a capo of all capos, or boss of all bosses, being murdered on Howard Beach and subsequently fished out of the East River. Now, if you remember, Marvin's last trip to Early Tyler came with a woe is me ass story about the latter chasing down a made man who's indebted to him for over 10 bands without any plan for repayment nor compensation. In fact, the unnamed mobster flexed his powerful connects and associations to further delay and ignore the payment altogether, according to Early. Marvin's response to this was for Early to, quote, do what he needs to do, and that's apparently what he did, as the man now swims with the fishes, as the Italians say. Though Early did abide Marvin's command, Marvin just broke Stefano's in a real way. Stefano previously warned Marvin that any misstep by the man he vouched for following the cold usurping and replacement of his original bookie would come back to haunt him. Thus, the way out from under Stefano's rule may inevitably lead to violence, as the slaying of a made man won't be answered by anything less. Also, keep in mind that Marvin is already on board with making a move against Stefano per his prior exchange with Rock, fearing that Marchetti may come to terms with Jersey and sell out his longtime drug partners as a part of the agreement. Remember, Stefano is built for the thin and never the thick. He sold out his former Jersey boss, Sal Baselli, to empower Rock and Marvin in the first place, using Rock's strategy and Marvin's muscle as a means to an end without getting his hands dirty and raising the suspicions of his fellow mob bosses. And he moved against Sal once Baselli made a misstep in business through violence and war, 2 things that drew immediate police attention and took away from drug profitability. He's an old school guy with old school sensibilities, and the last thing he wants is a war to take place and make the block hot yet again. A nice and quiet environment is best for business, and his treacherous suggestion against Rock through her own brother has firmly cemented how he maneuvers going forward. Which brings us to missable detail number 3. Stefano and Kanan, partners. I work with your mother, kid, not you. This is what Stefano declared to Rock's ambitious young son during their surprise encounter earlier this season, courtesy of Kwan's good word. Though much has changed in the time span between episode 4 and episode 7, and we're seeing Rock and Stefano have their first bout of opposition since her re-entry into the game in the latter portion of season 3. That opposition is only buffered by Kanan's growing estrangement from his mom, as she's now formally suspected of doing the unthinkable against his best friend and fallen brother Famous. If that suspicion evolves into a definitive realization, then it will be all the motivation needed for Kanan to permanently sever all ties with his mother. And with someone like Stefano, motivation and manipulation are constant neighbors and rarely strangers, as he conveyed to Rock and Hafiz during their business meeting in 406. My friends, i.e. the Italians, they're always looking for a better deal. A better deal in this scenario may no longer reside with a seasoned mother whose past transgressions have made her more trouble than she's worth in the present. The better deal may be with a younger prospect whose hunger, ambition, impressionability, and most importantly, proximity to his current problem, i.e. Rock, make him easier to manage and conduct future business with. Remember, Stefano approached Marvin about removing Rock from the equation, taking her place in the leadership and executing business sans the melodrama that accompanied Rock's regime. Marvin staunchly refused this angle. But what about Kanan? What if Stefano brought the same deal to Kanan in the episodes to come, and worse yet, made his mother's removal the price of admission to his dreams of business independent of her influence? Could we see such a deal be presented? And more importantly, would Kanan take it? If she's the true culprit behind the Famous conspiracy, the answer is in the question. Missable detail number 2, a tale of two moms. Rock finally comes to terms with her mother's transgressions after a brief overview of her life and the rare instances of light highlighted by her brothers among the darkness shrouding her transgressions against her children historically. This fresh perspective, coupled with Marvin and Lou's exposure of her euthanasia request, ushers in the spirit of forgiveness within Rock. She makes peace with her mother once and for all, and agrees to mercifully send her home and liberate her spirit from the pain currently ravaging her flesh. Prior to leaving this realm, however, Mama Joyce stresses 2 things to Rock. Take care of your brothers and take care of your son. The underlying conflict here is that directly preceding the moment of truth between Rock and her mother, Kanan has his own epiphany regarding Rock and her potential role in the vicious removal of his best friend Famous. Rock resented her mother throughout the series and gave her zero grace up until her concluding moments on her deathbed. Equally, Kanan has grown to resent his mother just as much, if not more so, due to her deceptions and manipulations carried out in the name of love. Ironically, Rock held her mother to a standard that she doesn't hold herself to when assessing Kanan's opinion of her and her actions. But it's like Marvin said, Juke and Kanan are the ones who decide whether or not their parents were good or reprehensible, and the latter may hold final in Kanan's mind as he navigates the truth behind his moment of clarity. Every action that follows this will come back to this moment, but Rock's decision to forgive may save her some much needed grace when it's Kanan's turn to decide if he will do the same. And missable detail number 1, Rock all alone. Kanan and Jukebox, still lost on the true perpetrator behind Fame's death, discuss the possibilities over a meal. After ruling out Unique, Kanan still leans on the police angle, with Jukebox adding that, quote, these crooked-ass cops ain't do that shit on their own. Somebody out here paid them for that work. If this police shit is real, that call on Fame came from the street. Later, we see Kanan searching for little punk-ass OC, who definitely sent him on that wild goose chase last episode in order to rob him of his startup money for his future endeavors. While on that hunt, Kanan witnesses Rock paying off the cops for some unknown favor, leading to his conclusion that it had to be for the murder of his friend. His cousin's words undoubtedly playing in his head while witnessing the egregious act. Somebody out here paid them for that work. Interestingly enough, these were the same cops who previously extorted Rock during her legitimate era back in season 3. They're the dirtiest of the dirty, which would explain why Fame's death was the worst of the worst, if they committed it after all. That's the most burning question at this juncture in the series. Is the money Rock's paying these known dirtbags in concurrence with previous installments for the murder of Famous, or is it for something else? Perhaps she's paying these cops to subvert Unique's corner-by-corner takeover of her drug business and using the NYPD to protect and serve in the name of the almighty dollar. Or worse yet, maybe she's compensating them for information she could potentially use against Stefano. as he's now closer to an open enemy than distant friend. These are just a couple of the possibilities, but one thing we know for certain is that she's not paying them out of any extortion effort, as that time has passed. So just what could be the reason? Could Rocket even enlisted the Italians to get Famous out of the way? Stefano did cryptically reply to Rock's assertion that no one needed to worry about her feelings with, quote, Famous last words. Kanan isn't considering any of the aforementioned, and if he jumps to rash conclusions that manifest into rasher actions, he'll be in the same boat as Neek from a socio-emotional standpoint. A violent outlier with no regard for the truth, but hard up for revenge without reason. With that being said, there is a case to be made against Rock in the murder of Famous, but we'll get into all of that in the next video. But that will do it for this one though. What are some details you noticed that I didn't mention here? Be sure to drop me your predictions in the comments below. As always, I thank you for watching today's video. If you liked today's video, go ahead and drop $1 on that Cash App for us, hit the like button, share it with your friends who are Power fans, and subscribe for more content such as this. This is Rudy P. Magic of Rudy P. Magic Beats, and have a blessed one until the next one. Peace, y'all.